What is up, everyone? Welcome to a special edition of Mongols brought to you by the Beautiful Game Network. I'm Mike. With me is Kev, and we swapped one president for another. We got rid of the Steel Army president. We got the Riverhounds team president, Jeff Garner, with us. Jeff, thanks for joining us, man.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I've heard so much about you guys and certainly follow you on social media. So it's nice to be able to chat a little bit and get to know a little bit about you and learn more about our fans and the Riverhounds.
So yeah, welcome home. You're originally from York, PA. You went to Robert Morris University. I'm actually, so I do this podcast. I currently live in Knoxville, Tennessee, but I was born and raised in Pittsburgh and spent most of my life there. So when you realized you were coming back to Pittsburgh, what's the first thing that you wanted to do, eat, see? Like, for example, like every time I go home, and you do not need to get this specific, obviously, but like I love going to I know, right? I love going to like Minio's and Squirrel Hill and Jerry's Records right next to it or something. Get a pizza and go, record stuff. Is there something that you kind of looked forward to coming back to Pittsburgh?
Sure. And I spent most of 15 years in Altoona and State College, which is not exactly Western Pennsylvania, but on the edge of it, probably. Certainly, Steelers and Pirates and Penguins and Riverhounds country. So I went to college here, as you mentioned, met my wife here in Moon at the campus at Robert Morris. It certainly has changed a lot in the 20 plus years since we graduated. I was excited to come back to see the changes. As I mentioned in Altoona, we would come back occasionally on weekends. So it's not like I have been gone completely for years. So, but I think the growth of Pittsburgh and how the city has changed and matured and the fan base has changed a little bit. I think that's been fascinating. And it's been really exciting to show my kids in particular. I mean, there's things that I'm excited about, but which I'll share. But I think like being able to explain what Permane Brothers is to my daughter and say, and this probably isn't good for a 14-year-old, but I'm like, I'm going to take you there at 2 a.m. just so you can see what's happening at Permane Brothers at 2 a.m. and not one of the other locations, one of the original ones. So I think there's things like Permane's. It was great to be on campus at Robert Morris recently and show my kids, I was in that dorm as a freshman and, walked down this street and played football in that stadium and those kind of things. So I think it's been really exciting to share part of my past and my wife's past. And we met here and, fell in love. I know that sounds cheesy, but fell in love here. And I think to be able to share that with our family and our kids and some of those areas and spots and places that have meant so much to us has been really exciting and a big part of coming back here. It feels like we've come full circle where my career over 20 years has taken me all over the country and had all kinds of great experiences in different sports and different roles. And it feels like this is home. And we're back, and I can't wait to finish raising my kids here and have them. My daughter's going into high school. My son's going into middle school, 6th grade. And so it's a perfect time for us to really settle down, be here for a long time, and really enjoy raising a family in Pittsburgh, which is what Pittsburgh is so well known for. It's such a great place to do with family. So it's exciting to be here and to share all of that with our kids. And ultimately to share the Riverhounds with our kids and all the advancements that have happened there, to see the stadium growth and the brand growth since we left in 2000 when the Riverhounds were just starting, and to see Montour Junction coming online. I think those are things that are really exciting as we start to look forward, not just back.
Yeah, before we get to that too, I mean, to touch upon, you mentioned where your career has taken you. From looking at Orange County for a second, what's some of the biggest things that you've learned in your 3 years at Orange County?
Geez, I learned a whole lot more about the game of soccer and the role of the USL in the landscape of US soccer. Coming into it, I did not have much of a background in soccer. I was exposed to a little bit of it at Penn State. We won a women's national championship while I was there. But that was really my only exposure. And so being at Orange County, where we had a similar size stadium, we had a team that, just like Pittsburgh, has been successful on the field, was always in the hunt for the playoffs. And to win a championship there, I think I learned certainly what it takes to win at this level. And with Oliver Wiese, our general manager in Orange County, really learned the importance of development and the role of the USL championship and even League One and League Two as an alternate to MLS and MLS Academy, and where I think the USL and the future of US soccer lies. And I couldn't break down a game for you strategically, But I think learning as much as I did at Orange County about the development and some of the players that we've sent on to Europe and Mexico and other places in global soccer, I think I'm really bullish and excited. And I would have never thought I'd end up in the game of U.S. soccer, but I'm really excited what the next few years of the USL looks like. And I'm officially an MLS hater. So I'll say it publicly.
Speaking a little bit, I mean, you mentioned, similar size stadiums, the focus on youth development. Thinking a little bit about maybe the kind of cultural similarities and or differences between, what it might take to be successful in Southern California versus what it might take to be successful in Pittsburgh. What do you think about that?
I think it depends what you prioritize. The majority of my role and my priority in Orange County was getting people in the stadium, was trying to find ways to use the stadium and create revenue to help support development. Oliver's priority was to develop professional soccer players that could go on through the pathway and play at the highest levels and create transfer fees and revenue streams that way. So while every market is unique and different, and certainly Pittsburgh and Orange County, California are about as different as you could possibly be, I think the fundamentals that I've learned and employed in my 20 plus years in sports, the things that I did at Penn State, the things I did at the Altoona Curve, the things I did at the Myrtle Beach Pelicans or Texas Rangers, whatever it may be, I think a lot of those things play here. And it's creating value and creating experience for fans when they come, that they have a great customer service experience, that win or lose, they enjoy themselves and they feel like they've gotten a great value. Everybody works hard for their money, particularly families, but everybody. And so when they choose to spend their money here at Highmark Stadium, let's make sure they have a great time. And probably our most important role is that we can create memories for families, right? I had an old boss who used to say, we're not in the baseball business, we're in the memory making business. And I absolutely 100% believe that. Those moments throughout a game, when you can see kids and parents together, maybe it's on the field after the game or it's in the stands, or maybe it's getting kids out on the field pregame with the team tunnel. Those kind of moments are the things that is why we do what we do. And I think those hold true regardless of what market you're in. Now, the nuance of maybe how you market those things and how you present those things, I think that changes a little bit. But I'm really excited to be in Pittsburgh, a city that's known for its sports fans and known for its loyalty. And so I think to be able to play to that and make sure that we are a brand that Pittsburgh can be proud of, that we do right by our fans and that we provide a great experience, and that when our players go out on the field, they do everything they can to win the game. I think that's our duty, and I think why we're here. And, part of, I think, what we carry as we go forward as a priority for our fans and I think what makes the future so bright.
And Mike, I have a quick comment before I pass it over to you for more questions. Yeah, I mean, like in response to the memory making business, yeah, I mean, I unfortunately can't make it to games as often as I would like, but I constantly watch and seeing the quote unquote like product of Highmark Stadium on TV, especially on like nice nights in Pittsburgh with the backdrop and the fans in the stadium, people having fun. It seems like it's a pretty good base to start from the memory making business. It's a Highmark, I think, already kind of produces some nice memories. But yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
And we've had such a rich history here, and not all of the USL teams and not even the MLS teams can really say that, right? We've been around since 1999 in some form or another. There's a lot of history to be proud of. And that's something that I think that we should actually do a better job sort of memorializing around the stadium and in our experience, and be very proud of that history, because not all teams have it. So I think you'll see more of that as we go forward, and sort of some of those moments that everybody remembers, certain games, certain goals. Let's make sure that we can feel that around the stadium and as we create new ones.
Yeah, I mean, with all of this emphasis on community, we did put out a poll the other day where we asked, basically there was a lot of great videos. We've all seen them of the players on the field. We've been there, the players on the field interacting with the fans. And so we threw out a hypothetical on Twitter. For those of you who aren't following us, go follow @Mongols on Twitter. We do a new poll every single day. But we basically said, look, if you gave up that close relationship with the community, so there's no more going on the field, there's no more high-fiving players, there's none of that. But in return, we would get back-to-back titles. Would you take it? And 46% of the people who voted said, no, the community means more. So Jeff, your thoughts on sort of that? I thought that more people would take the titles. I personally voted for the community, but I just assumed more people would take the titles. What's your reaction to that?
Well, now you've upped the ante by offering back-to-back titles. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know. You might want to redo that and see how it comes back. I think that probably goes to the makeup of our fan base. And I think we probably have a percentage of fans, and I have no idea yet what that number is, that are absolutely 100% here for football and to watch the match and to be, dead set on whatever's happening on the field and that live and die with the results. Then there's also a group of fans that are here for the community aspect. They're here for a great night out with their family or their colleagues or their friends or whatever it may be. They're here to make memories, right? So I think those are the people, and maybe it's half, that are here for a cold beer and a nice night out, with fairly easy in and out parking and traffic and in and out of the stadium and a good seat and sort of a close interactive kind of experience, than whether we win or lose or what happens on the field. And I think we need to play to both audiences, right? We need to make sure that, again, we're putting forth maximum effort on the field and that we are focused on winning matches and winning a championship. But that also, regardless of what happens on the field, we're going to make sure that our fans have a good time in the stadium. And I think there are certainly, the framework is there. There are certainly already some good things that have happened. There's a lot of, we'll call it low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of opportunity out there as well to make that experience even better. I know bathrooms under the bleachers are a big request I've heard a bunch of times, but there's a million other things. And some of it is small, some of it is details. And so I think over the last 2.5 weeks or so that I've been here, in the first 2 games that I physically have been here for, and certainly what we did in Orange County over the past 3 years, we focused on the details and making sure that the things that we did, we tried to do them the best that we could and make sure that we had, we were fan centric and had fans in mind, and to try to make things easy for them, make it a good experience. And then where we could find opportunities to make big changes, we tried to do that as well. And there's certainly some of those opportunities here at the stadium, limited in the remaining days of 2022, but certainly for 2023. And then as we look forward, Tuffy and I have talked about a lot of different plans for what the stadium could look like in a few years.
You're sort of like leading into my next question, which is great. Kevin and I, we will never be in sort of the position that you're in right now. And obviously you mentioned you've been here for a few weeks now. Can you just describe your process a little bit? You're coming into a new team. How do you assess those opportunities? How do you determine, what is the priority? Let us into your head a little bit. How do you figure that stuff out?
I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, and it's what I hope what most people would do. It's a lot of listening, right? I can come in here with 20 years of experience and make a bunch of assumptions, and some of them might be right. But the more I listen, I think the more information I gather. We're in the middle of the season, so I can't necessarily wait around and sort of assess for 6 months and then decide what to do. It's a little bit of both. How much can I gather? How much can I talk to fans? How much can I hear from staff? How much can I put that information together and help to prioritize it? Not just the club, Highmark Stadium, Montour Junction, RDA. How are all those things fitting together? I certainly need to listen to those things, but I also need to look for opportunities for easy wins, quick fixes. Where are some details that we can clean up and change and start to build infrastructure, right? We are growing. We're going to continue to grow. We have very aggressive plans, I think, for expanding as we get into 2023 and beyond. If we don't have the infrastructure in place to support that, then things start to crack and things start to, fall through the cracks. And that's certainly something that we don't want to happen. That's not going to provide a good fan experience or a good academy experience. So I think as we build infrastructure, it's not the sexiest thing, right? And it might not even be particularly visible to everybody, but it will be hugely important as we continue to scale up and we continue to add things, that we have the infrastructure in place to do it. So I'm listening and try to understand what are those points of pain for fans and for staff, and how do we alleviate those? Are there quick fixes to some of those things? And for the long-term things, do we have the infrastructure in place to support it from, by 2025? And if we add a few thousand seats, and what do we need to make that successful, rather than be reactive? I think I'll address one of the things that probably is of concern. Maybe it's not, but I've heard a little bit of it, is there's been a lot of transition here, particularly in my seat, right? You've had a couple different presidents that have come and gone. And I think consistency will be very important as we go forward. I think everybody in this seat has probably had different approaches and said and promised different things. And some of those things, I realize that the only way I'll gain that trust is to be here, right? So some of it, time will tell. And as I'm here longer, believe me, if we go anywhere, my wife will literally kill me. And I'm putting that on the record just in case anything happens. You guys know who it was.
Yeah.
But, I'm the priority, or the possibility and the opportunity in front of us is so exciting to me. It's why I moved from literally the beach in Southern California with palm trees and beautiful weather. That's why I moved back to this area, because of the opportunity that exists in this market with all the pieces that are in place here. And so that's why I'm really excited to be here and plan to be here. And that consistency alone, I think, will actually bring a lot of improvement, because you'll get to sort of share in the same vision, be a part of building that, and we'll get to do this together rather than getting to know somebody else every year or two.
I was going to say, in the 5+ years that we've been doing the show, I think we've probably talked to 5 or 6 team presidents at this point. So everything that you're saying makes total sense. One of the things that's always been interesting about sort of past presidents is that none of them had a USL background, that we either come from baseball or football or college or something else. You obviously have the experience. When you step into a situation where, it is USL, it is soccer, you have the background in other sports as well. Is there a secret sauce, or is there something that sets the USL apart from those other things that you think you can look at and be like, nope, we got to fix that because this is USL specific? Or do you think that well, go ahead. I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely there is. The style of play and the continuity of play is a part of it, right? Baseball, you play an inning, you stop for 90 seconds, you play another inning, you stop, it's slow. There's a lot of opportunities to do fan prompts and, promotions and different things. That doesn't exist in soccer, right? You are going. And anything you're trying to do during play, you border on taking attention away from the game, right? And so there's clubs out there like Las Vegas, for instance, that blur that line quite a bit. I like being creative and like coming up with great promotions and creating great memories and great experiences, but I try to tread that line very carefully, that what's happening in the game is the game, and that's not our world, right? That's for the players and coach to be involved and make that happen. We are there to support that experience. We're there to support the game, and so enhance it for fans. You likely, not on purpose at least, will see us sort of playing over things or trying to get too involved in the game. So we have a couple opportunities, pregame, halftime, and postgame, where we can really shine from a fan experience standpoint. And so that's different than other sports, right? It's a very short window. The whole experience is maybe 3 hours, right? You get 2 hours of a game, maybe you come a little bit early. If you're here for the tailgate, maybe you have 4 hours, but it's a condensed experience. And so we don't have a lot of time to get you in, make sure you have a great time, and get you home safely. And so I think that approach is a little bit different in how we do that. And then I think the biggest difference is we are not in control of the atmosphere as much as we would like to be. Our fans are in control of the atmosphere, right? Steel Army is in charge of the atmosphere, our supporters groups. Unlike any other sport, the NBA, you play music all through the game and you can sort of fake it and, add sound and do those things. We really can't do much of that. So we can enhance the game, but if our fans aren't into the game, it's a little quiet, right? And it's hard to sort of build that up. So I think we have to make sure that we provide opportunities for our fans to get into the game, to make it easy for them, and to make sure that they bring the atmosphere, and we rely on them. We can't fake it. We can't control it. It's up to our fans to make sure that the atmosphere and that we're providing sort of home field advantage for the players. So we have some responsibility in trying to make that easy for fans. And then certainly the fans have the responsibility of bringing the noise, right?
Yeah. So no mattresses on the sidelines or llamas at halftime. Good. Glad to hear it. Perfect.
Well, see, halftime, I'm okay with halftime. It's between the lines while the clock is running, I draw the line. But so don't rule out anything at halftime. Yeah, okay.
Fair enough. You mentioned Vegas, obviously being involved with the USL, you've interacted with other presidents. Are there other teams, as we try to get a sense of sort of what to expect? And obviously I'm I'm fully on board for sort of sitting back. You've sort of said everything right up to this point in my mind. But are there other teams that you sort of look to and you say like they're doing a great job, or you sort of draw some ideas from inspiration, or is it more every market is different and you're just going to try to come in and do something completely unique?
I mean, markets are different from a marketing standpoint, but like I said before, I think from a experience standpoint and sort of what professional sports teams should deliver to their fans, I think that's pretty standard. I think stadiums are very different in the USL. And so, you know, I don't want to admit this publicly, but you go to the stadium in Louisville, they've got a fantastic setup, a fantastic stadium. They do a really good job. They do a good job in the community. You know, I'm separating it from what happens on the field, and I hope they lose every game. But from a professional standpoint and from a franchise standpoint, they're setting a pretty high standard. I think Louisville is a team to keep an eye on and to, I don't want to say emulate, but certainly to compete with when it comes to, you know, the business side and when it comes to fan experience. You know, I lean a little bit to the West because that's where I've been the past few years. So teams like Oakland, who's joined the league a few years ago, does a great job in marketing. Now they've bounced around stadiums and, you know, the fan experience is a little bit different, but some of the other things they've done have been great. San Diego has done a great job getting off the ground the past few years. New Mexico does a great job. So I think those are some of the teams that I look at. I can probably pull something from every team though. You know, I think it's across the board that every team does certain things well and maybe some other things not so well. So I think if we can find opportunities to pick off all the good stuff, then I have no problem stealing things and taking good ideas and making them our own and delivering them for our fans. And so that's, you know, don't hold it against me if I blatantly rip off other teams. I will admittedly do that.
Yeah, if it works, it works. No, I mean,
exactly.
From the Louisville thing too, I mean, that's something that I've kind of mentioned before going back years, at least on the field. I have less concern and insight on off the field club dynamics, but we've always said, like, we know once we consistently finish above Louisville, we've, you know, done a pretty damn good job in the East Conference. Going over, you've mentioned the Montour complex now a couple of times. You mentioned some infrastructure stuff. I mean, you mentioned infrastructure not being sexy. Well, this demographic loves infrastructure talk. So,
I'm sorry.
So, have you been to the Montour complex yet? And do you have a sense of how that compares to what other teams offer in the USL?
Yeah, of course. I came out when I visited a few months ago, was blown away. I mean, I had an expectation and seen some pictures, but to actually, you know, stand inside and to look at the progress that's been made, and then to be in there, we had a tournament there last weekend. And so I was up there Friday night, and it's continuing to come along, and we're, you know, probably getting into October. I know the timeline has shifted a few times and moved, but what construction project doesn't have that? It's really exciting to see that open. I think it's very competitive with any other training ground in the USL. I think it opens the door from a academy standpoint to set ourselves even further apart as sort of the professional and elite academy option in Pittsburgh and in Western Pennsylvania, which hopefully continues to draw great players, and we can look to develop them into our pathway and eventually to our first team. I think it provides great assets for our first team from a training standpoint and from a facility standpoint. I think it helps us attract great players as we go out and recruit and try to bring people in. For the kids and the community that will be using it, whether it's flag football or lacrosse or soccer, I think it's a great community asset. You know, my daughter and actually my wife is teaching at Olsh, which is right up the hill. And so I drive by almost every day. And to see the amount of usage that's already happening and all the kids that are on that field, I think that's only going to continue to grow. I think using it as a introduction to multicultural marketing, particularly the Hispanic market in Coriopolis, but in other parts of Pittsburgh too, to be able to use the game of soccer to bring these communities together. I think we've already seen some of that with some adult leagues that play there on Sunday. So sky's the limit. Not only though does Montour add all those benefits, it actually moves some of our training activities from Highmark out to Montour, and it allows us to use Highmark in a different way. So I think you'll see more events and more diverse events at the stadium that we may not be able to do necessarily right now because of availability, because we're training here. and that has taken priority, rightfully so. So I think there's, the effect sort of ripples through the whole organization. And it's really exciting to think about, like, great, now we have more space at Highmark Stadium. What are we going to do? What can we bring in? Beer fests and wing fests and music and concerts. And there's all the basic stuff, but geez, flea markets and swap meets and movies on the pitch and, coming out to watch fireworks shows and bringing a blanket and being able to sit on the field, or, all kinds of great ideas of how to use the stadium. And some of that's been done, some of it hasn't. I think you'll continue to see some of that pop up as we go forward this year, and then definitely into 2023 as we go forward. Snowball fights.
Awesome. Yeah,
that's a thing, right? You could do that. Charge for a giant snowball fight,
especially in Pittsburgh after being in Orange County, right? Yeah. So, I get a quick small question too. I guess, like, because so far, at least for me, like the Montour complex is still a little bit kind of shrouded in mystery. Like, on a basic level, is there like Riverhound like signage that like people see as they come in and kind of get that exposure?
I feel like you have been peeking at my notes.
I swear.
Yeah, I think that's some of the unfinished and some of the easy fixes that I was talking about. I think there's some opportunities there where if you go out there right now, you don't see a lot of Riverhounds. So a little bit, but not enough, not nearly enough. And I think it's easy to say, hey, as we finish and sort of the look and feel, the bells and whistles are some of the things that go in at the end, and the aesthetic stuff. I think there's some easy stuff we could do right now to make sure that Montour Junction is associated with the Riverhounds and with the Academy, and that people understand that this all connects and goes together, and that there's a pathway here, and that it's a contribution to the community as well, that the Riverhounds are connected to the community. So it's a great marketing opportunity that, quite honestly, we're not taking advantage of as of this past weekend at the tournament, but that has already been a conversation since I was there Friday night, that let's look at some opportunities to get basic stuff there, like signage. Let's get ammo out there when we have a tournament. And, some of those families are not from the Pittsburgh area, and they may not be in town to buy tickets or to come to an event later. But it doesn't matter, right? Like, let's let them go back and say, what a great time we had in Pittsburgh, and we met the mascot, and we know who the Riverhounds are. And maybe we're watching from Knoxville, right? Or maybe we're involved in social media, and it's just growing the brand. And so I think all of those opportunities are truly opportunities that we should be trying to seize and take advantage of. And let's face it, I don't think it's that hard, to put some signs up. It's not that expensive. There's plenty of opportunity there. So I think you'll see that as you go forward. Now, in the finished plans, I think there's plenty of sort of built-in representation. So it'll be a mix of that, and then where we do some customized stuff, I think, between now and then. And then once it opens, we'll learn as we go sort of where traffic is and where we need to have some signage, and how we can get people using Montour to also come to Highmark and become Riverhounds fans.
We've talked a little bit, we've danced around the notion of the Academy and bringing players up and through. And so we'd be remiss to not bring up the fact that you were in Orange County when teenager Kobe Henry signed with Stade Durance in the French First Division. How does a deal like that happen? And, should you've sort of like said it, but like, I just want to, confirm, do you think the Riverhounds Academy's players should be excited that you're here because of that sort of deal that went down? Not making any promises, obviously, but like,
yeah. So I would probably define my role, first of all, just to make sure expectations are correct. So I'm, that relationship, and a lot of our transfers in Orange County were exactly that. We're relationships with the European soccer market. And a lot of that came from our general manager, Oliver Wies, who honestly is a genius, right? We probably did not have the best team last year. We had the hottest team. And I think a lot of that was Oliver, as the general manager, putting that team together, and the personalities he put together. We had, Orange County has one of the lower payrolls in the league, but has still been competitive and won a championship, and has now developed, I think we had 5 players that had been transferred in the last 2 years or so while I was there. Honestly, a lot of that credit goes to Oliver. I think my experience being a part of it, though, I think helps to open the door. I won't provide the relationships that Oliver will, but that's okay, because in Pittsburgh, our relationships are pretty strong. And I think we've got a great opportunity with the relationships that are already here. I think where my expertise may come in is how we bridge the gap for families and for elite soccer players in the area, to stay in Pittsburgh, to play in the academy, and to understand what the opportunities are to play in the USL and eventually get to Europe or Mexico or maybe even the MLS, and how that may be a better path for them than going to an MLS academy or going to the MLS directly. And so I think I certainly can bring the understanding the value of creating that pathway. And I think that's what I'll work with the academy on and work with our coaching staff on, is to make sure where can we seize those opportunities so that our best players are staying here and best players in the region are coming here to play in our academy and ultimately to play for our first team and to go from there. So I would not take too much credit for Kobe Henry and how that went down, but being witness to it and being a part of it, I think I certainly value that as part of an organization, and how can we help to do some of that here?
Yeah. So at this point, we have 5 regular season home games left. How much of what you're focused on is geared towards making changes for 2022 versus planning for improvements for 2023?
Yeah, that's a tough question because you want things to happen quickly, right? And you want to be able to sort of snap your fingers and put all these changes into place. I think it's probably a delicate balance because I will say that I'm trying not to try to do so much without some of the infrastructure being in place that we sort of crash and burn and don't do things well. I think it's very important that I'm okay doing a little bit less if we do those things really well. Trying to do everything and not doing them very well, I think, is a mistake. So I think we have to very carefully choose what we have enough time for, what we have the right infrastructure for, what we have the right staffing for, so that we can do those things well and execute them well. I think those probably focus on the last 4 games. We've got some things in mind for the 31st. It's a Wednesday night. It's a challenging night to begin with. So we have to get pretty creative there. It'll be a very focused plan. But I think as we get into the last 4 games, we're trying to sort of ramp up the promotional schedule and what the value is. I've heard a rumor that on September 10th, dollar beers may be coming back.
Oh, snap.
So there are, some quick and easy fixes that I think we can do. And some of that will happen in 22, certainly. And I'm very excited for what we can accomplish in the off season. Later in September, we're actually going away for a few days as a staff and starting to work on what 2023 looks like, ideas. How do we get outside the box? How do we create some creative ideas, things that have not been done here before? How do we get people talking about coming to a Riverhounds game and what to expect and how much fun it is, whether you're a soccer fan or not? And I think you'll see more of that as we go into the off season, as we announce some of those things. And then, by the time we hit January, I think we'll be sort of fully out there with the schedule and a pretty robust idea of what we're going to be offering for 23. So it's a mix and match. I think some of the heavier stuff will be in 23, as you'd expect, but we are still working very hard on what's left of 22 in the regular season. And then, I'm counting on having home playoff games. So trying to make sure that we deliver on those games as well.
Here's the hope. No, yeah.
I'm planning for them.
That's good. So we've commented a little bit already about how Highmark has been near or at capacity for a lot of games this season. We had a question from one of the fans at halftime saying that, Highmark seems more packed than normal. Like, what do we think? Why do we think that's the case? I mean, you can comment on that maybe a little bit, but for a Highmark stadium that has been kind of maybe increasing in attendance, I guess, how do you continue to grow the fan base, thinking about like where we're at currently with like stadium capacity and fan, ticket sales and all of that?
I mean, that's a very multi-layered, complicated question.
You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. I think the best way to probably describe it is that there's the external facing, there's the marketing. How do we go out and get people? Our sales effort. And at the end of the day, we're a business. We're selling a product, and so we need to go out and sell the value of season tickets. We need to go out to sell the value of flex plans and group plans. And how do we get people to purchase and purchase early? And why is that a good idea? So that's our outbound effort. And then there's the inbound, which is largely affected by marketing. So what kind of marketing are we doing? We've actually already tweaked our marketing in the 2 weeks that I've been here, and we've seen some really good results. We've started to head much more digital. and much more mobile friendly than maybe some of the things that we were doing earlier in the year, which is not to say anything we were doing earlier is right or wrong. I think what you do at the beginning of the year and how you market in a much more broad brand awareness kind of way makes sense. I think at this point in the year, it's letting people know we have a game on this date and this is what's going on and here's how you buy a ticket, and making it very easy for them. And I think that's where we've really shifted as we've gone forward. There's a lot more to do on the marketing front, and we're working very hard on that for these last 4 or 5 games and certainly the playoffs. On the sort of outbound side, really we're trying to put the staff in place so that we have a little bit more outbound effort, so that we are reaching out and sharing the value with local companies, with small businesses, with youth soccer clubs, with churches, with neighborhood organizations, you name it, on the value of bringing your employees together for a night out, bringing your congregation out for a night of fellowship, bringing your school out and creating some pride. And how do we create those memory and experiences for all those groups, and making sure that you can get 30 and 40 and 50 people out together to enjoy a game. You start to build fan base that way, where, hey, they'll come out as a group and then maybe they come out later on their own with their family. And it starts to fill a third or a half of the stadium further in advance. It takes some of the risk away for us. So that's why season tickets might be discounted from what the gate price is, and why groups there might be benefits, because it's in our best interest to sell those tickets earlier so that we're not, if it rains, we don't have an empty stadium. Where if you're relying on the single game side, if you get bad weather on Friday or Saturday, people say, I'm not going to show up. It's raining, and you're sort of subject to that risk. So I think it's trying to balance both sides of that. The biggest challenge in my mind is ramping up the outbound side. I think the marketing side is actually coming pretty quickly, and we're seeing great results. And honestly, that's a big part of, I think, the success we've had the last couple of games has been some of those tweaks on the marketing side.
All interesting stuff. I'm just trying to soak it all up. We polled the fans once again about a week ago. We were asking specifically about the same topic, where it's okay, we're seeing more and more people at Highmark. We've theorized for years, and I know we've had conversations with Tuffy at one point where we said, is Highmark ever going to expand? Is there a chance that it could happen? And it's always been, well, there will be a time and place for that. And so one of the questions that we just sort of threw out there, and I know you've seen this before, we just said, imagine that Highmark grows and expands. What feature would you most like to see added, assuming that there's already a bathroom under the Paul Child section, which you've already said you've looked into, we're considering it. And 29% of people said a larger team store, 42% said a roof over the stands. And then we also had more concessions and others. Some of the others were a standing room only section and things like that. So just curious, I don't expect a definitive answer of you saying that we're putting a roof over the stands, but just when you hear feedback like that, is what do you think of stuff
Sure.
like that?
I will tell you that it's all great feedback, and that 3 of those 4, I didn't have a lot of other conversations today, but 3 of those 4, I actually had legitimate conversations about all of those. We talked about.
Oh, wait, now hold up. 3 of those 4. So
right.
Now I'm trying to guess which one you didn't discuss.
We didn't talk about other.
Okay.
So we talked. I actually met with our merchandise staff, and we talked about the size of the store and the layout of the store. It is a tight squeeze. Is there a major construction project around the corner to build out the store? Probably not. But are there more places where we could add merchandise and make it easier and more accessible, and how we sort of package it and price it and some different things? So we talked about that today. We had a conversation about what it would take to add a roof over the stands, not over the field, not a dome or anything, but something over the grandstand to create, some shade and some cover. Not out of the question, not happening in the next month, but
right.
But a legitimate conversation, and something that was brought up today, and we had a real conversation about it. And certainly concessions. I mean, all of these things are touch points, and your experience is made up of all those things. And so the food that you smell, the food that you eat, what you see, all of those different senses make up your experience. And so I think food and the experience of food and drink is extremely important to the overall experience. We've got some challenges with the footprint of the stadium. There's not a ton of room to do a lot within the fence. There's some opportunity on the road that we own now. And so, there's some opportunity to do things there. We've already started to expand out into the parking lot a little bit. We've talked a lot about the corner next to the bleachers there that has some storage containers in it and some net storage. We've talked about what to do with that space. I think we really have to do a good job of using any and all of the space that we have. And all of those are completely legitimate. It's good to hear them reinforced by fans that that's what they're thinking about too, because those are all things that I've picked up on and our staff has picked up on, and we've had those conversations. So I don't have a definitive, 90-day plan for when we're going to start on expanding the store, but those conversations are happening, and I don't think any of them are impossible. I would think the most likely are tweaks to our merchandise and concessions. The roof, I think, is a little bit longer out, and that might be, 2 years, maybe more into the future, but it's out there, as well as expanding the stadium and wrapping the stadium around and creating, I guess I would describe it kind of as a horseshoe to the river and to the city. And I think there's some room to do that as well. So that's a few years off. We have to consistently be selling out, I think, before we get to that point. But Tuffy and I have already talked about it. So it's ongoing conversations and all within the realm of future possibility.
Man, you've been busy. I love it. What questions do you have for the fans? Like, how can the fans help you do what you do? And it seems like all of the work that you're cramming into the few hours that I'm sure that you have.
Yeah, more polls, Mike. There's more Twitter polls just there.
That's kind of what I was going to say. I mean, honestly, it's at games, grab me and nicely and pull me aside and let's talk. And I want to listen and tell me what you want and tell me what you like and tell me what you don't like. And I won't take it personally. And, I take it all as constructive criticism. If you've had a bad experience, let me know. My email is jeff@highmarkstadium.com. My phone number is 814-312-8754. Call my cell phone, text me, email me, and tell me if you've had a bad experience or give me an idea. Reach out to me on social media, whatever it may be. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that I can offer is communication. And the answer isn't always going to be, yes, we can do that, no problem. But we can certainly always listen. And when there's opportunities to make things great, then that's what we're here to do, is to try to do that. So the biggest thing I would have is let me know. Don't be quiet. Don't go away and never come back, right? Don't have a bad experience and go home and say that was awful and never come back. Call me, text me, email me, reach out and say, I had a bad experience. You may have noticed more surveys and more feedback opportunities going out after games. Take the time. We've made them short on purpose. It's 3 to 5 minutes probably, and let us know, because all of that information is usable. And I realize that if we ask those questions and then we don't do anything with it, you'll stop answering us, right? So I realize that we have to take action on those things. And like I said before, we can't do everything, right? We have limitations, and I think everybody understands that. But I think as long as we're making an effort and people are seeing improvement and we're continuing to improve the experience, I think most people tend to feel pretty good about that and support what we're doing and say, at least we're trying to make the experience the best we can. So that's what I would say is probably the most valuable thing is communicating with me, with our staff. I won't give out their cell phones, but just letting us know when there's issues and giving us a chance to fix it and make it better. And then when things are great, pat, you don't have to do it to me, but pat our staff on the back or say, hey, great job. We had a great time tonight. Those things are encouraging and helpful. Our staff puts in a ton of hours, a ton of work. We probably spend more time together than we do with our families. We may actually spend more time with our fans than we do with some of our families. And so that means a lot when they get quality feedback. And so feel free to put that in a survey too. We point that out in meetings. We talk about it. We celebrate those things as well. So yeah, just keep talking to us.
All fantastic stuff. I absolutely love it. And we want to be respectful of your time. So I want to wrap up here with one last question. You spent 3 years at Orange County. Where would you like to see the Hound, based on your exposure you've had so far, where would you like to see the Hounds in 2 to 3 years? You mentioned that consistency, all of that. If you could wave a magic wand in 3 years, where would you like to see things?
Wow. That's why it's the last question. It'll take up the rest of the time. I mean, I've got so many thoughts at this point early on, and still trying to figure out what's doable and, sort of where our limitations are. Right now, in my mind, everything's doable. On the field, I would love to see a championship. That's such a great experience, not only for our staff and for our players and our coaches, but for our fans. I mean, it means so much to all of us. It was great to be a part of that last year, and I can't wait to be a part of it here. Off the field, I think continuing to see improvement, to continue to see sold out games, to continue to add on to what we're doing at the stadium, whether that's, great experiences and promotions and fun things, or whether that's actual physical improvements at the stadium. I think getting Montour open and seeing tournaments and seeing the growth of the academy, and hopefully being able to see some players that come through the academy playing for our first team. I think that's a great goal to have in front of us too. And ultimately to see the very best of those players going on to the next step after leaving the Riverhounds and playing at the highest levels of global soccer and ending up in Europe and saying, hey, that's a product of the Riverhounds Academy and of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds Soccer Club. So I think those are the top level things. There's a million little things that I think as we continue to get better every single day, focus on the details. I would love to get to the point where, after each game, it's a list of all the great positive experiences we had. And right now, we're still sort of writing down all the things we need to improve. And I'm sure that will continue, because that's the type of sort of attitude we have, is we can always get better. We can always improve. But I think we can get to a point where, what a great night, packed house, great experience, team gets a win, people leave happy. That's a place that I can't wait to get to. And I've gotten to those points in a few different places. But I can't wait to really sit down and enjoy that time here over the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years that I'm here.
Awesome stuff. Jeff, as I mentioned, thank you so much for joining us. You are active on social media. We've actually had a couple people come to us and be like, we have presidents on social media. This is so cool. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, because they absolutely need to follow you.
Generally, I'm most active on Twitter, Jeff Garner 23. So feel free to follow and interact. I'm also on Instagram. I will admittedly say I'm not quite as active on Instagram. I look more than I act probably on Instagram, but I'm trying to do better. So I think that's Hounds Prez or Hounds SC Prez. So you can check me out there. I've avoided Facebook for all these years, so you will not find me there. And I'm not very active as a poster on TikTok, but I'm definitely on TikTok. That's like my favorite place. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, feel free, stop me at the stadium, reach out on social media. And if you want to see more, sort of social engagement, then, please let me know, and we'll come up with some creative ways to do that. So, and I appreciate you guys having me on today. In fact, I appreciate the fact that you host the podcast and you do this. You spread the word of the Riverhounds, and certainly support all the things that we're trying to do. And hopefully our responsibility is to reciprocate that and continue to give you guys a good atmosphere and a good experience. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And I guess the first chance that some of these fans, well, I shouldn't say the first, but one of the first chances that some of these fans are going to get a chance to interact with you this Saturday, you're going to be at Mike's Sports Bar watching the game at 7 p.m., correct?
Absolutely. I will be there. So come ready to chat. I can't wait to meet some people that I maybe haven't met at matches yet. Hopefully we get a win on the road, have a few beers, hang out. It'll be nice and casual and enjoyable. So please stop by. It'd be great to meet everybody. We'll be there. I'll probably be there a little bit before 7. So stop by. Be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Great.
We really, really appreciate it.
Jeff.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you very, very soon.